My greedy siblings forced our dad into a cheap nursing home and sold his house to split the cash. They didn't know dad had legally transferred the deed to me years ago. I let them complete the sale, then reported them for federal real estate fraud. I was 19 when dad got his first diagnosis. Prostate cancer, stage 2. Mark called from Denver, said that's good news, and hung up. Sarah texted a prayer emoji and went back to her vacation. I drove dad to his first chemo appointment and everyone after that for 6 years. I learned the names of his nurses. I memorized his medication schedule. On Tuesdays he had no appetite, so I made chicken broth from scratch. On Fridays he felt strong enough to sit on the porch, so I carried his chair outside. I did his laundry. I paid his bills when his hands shook too much to write. I slept in his guest room more nights than my own apartment. Mark and Sarah didn't visit. Not on Christmas. Not on his birthday. Not when the cancer came back as stage 3. But dad wasn't naive. One evening he said, when I go, they'll come for this house like vultures. I've watched them circle for years. He called his attorney the next week. A deed of gift was drafted, notarized, and recorded with the county. The house, a 4-bedroom Victorian worth $800,000, was transferred to my name. Clean title. No liens. Dad told me to keep it quiet. 3 years later, the vultures landed. Dad's health had declined sharply. Suddenly, Mark and Sarah appeared. They didn't bring flowers. They brought a power of attorney they'd had dad sign years earlier during a holiday visit when he was healthy and trusting. They used that POA to move dad into Greenfield Commons, a budget nursing facility. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaner. His room faced a parking lot. The mattress was thin. He looked at me and his eyes said everything. I moved him out the next morning into a private suite at Maplewood Senior Living. Memory foam bed, garden view, private bathroom. Paid from my own savings. I didn't tell my siblings. They never checked on him, so they never knew. They moved fast. Within 2 weeks, they listed the house. They presented the old POA as authorization to sell on dad's behalf. The agent didn't dig deeper. They forged dad's signature on closing documents. By that point, he could barely hold a spoon. The POA gave them authority to act on his behalf. It didn't give them authority to sell a house dad hadn't owned in 3 years. A developer bought it for $850,000 cash. Funds cleared on a Thursday. By Saturday, Mark and Sarah threw a party at the Langham Hotel. Champagne Towers. Private dining room. Mark wearing a new watch. Sarah booking 3 weeks in the Maldives. They toasted to finally getting what was owed. They didn't mention dad once. I watched from my phone, sitting next to dad's bed while he slept. I felt nothing but cold clarity. A man holding a winning hand, waiting to turn the cards. Monday morning, I walked into the county precinct with a folder. The original recorded deed from 3 years prior. The county filing stamp, the notarization, dad's attorney confirmation letter, screenshots of the listing, the closing documents with a forged signature, a side-by-side comparison of dad's real signature versus the forgery. The detective reviewed everything in 40 minutes. Then he said, this isn't a family dispute. This is real estate fraud and grand larceny. The house was never dad's to sell. The POA was irrelevant. It authorized action for an owner who no longer owned the property. My siblings sold a house that belonged to me, forged documents to do it, and pocketed $850,000 from pure fraud. Warrants were issued that afternoon. Mark was arrested trying on a leather jacket bought with the money. Sarah was picked up at a spa. The developer's funds were frozen and returned. The title was confirmed in my name. I drove dad home on a Sunday, carried him up the porch steps, set him in his chair, made him chicken broth. He looked around the living room and said, they really tried, didn't they? I said, they did. It didn't work. They're facing federal charges, 10 to 15 years each. They both called me from holding separately, saying the same thing. It was our inheritance. I gave them the same answer. Inheritance is for people who loved the person, not the property. Dad is back in his favorite room. The porch chair is where it always was, and the deed is exactly where it's been for 3 years. In my name, recorded and untouchable.